He is going for broke. Drew Pearson. He got it. Touchdown.
All right. Welcome into Now About Them Cowboys, episode number 2. This is a Toilets to Titles production. This is also a worldwide production. It's a worldwide production because I am John Sheps on the Twitter at Coach Sheps. I am here in New York. It is 7:43 a.m. when I am recording this, and my guy to the right of me, if you're watching at home, Andrew Campey, at Andrew Campey, who's down in Australia. I don't even know what time it is, but we're on both sides of the world covering the Dallas Cowboys. Andrew, how we doing, my guy?
Yeah, not too bad. So it's 10:43 for me on Sunday night. So as you can hear by my voice, I've been doing a lot of socializing this weekend. So I've probably talked enough, but I haven't talked enough Cowboys. So I'll still get through this show and talk about the important things.
Excellent. Yeah, man. You can follow the show on the Twitter at Toilets to Titles. If you're watching at home, please subscribe to the show on YouTube. Hit the like button on the episodes. Throw us some comments. That helps the algorithm. Right now, we're at 952 subscribers as we are recording this. And I assume and I hope that once we hit 1,000, it's just going to start to grow more rapidly. But you liking, commenting, subscribing, all of that really helps us. So if you like the content we're putting out there and you'd like to support us, that's a great way to support us. You could also support us by joining our Patreon, patreon.com/Toilets to Titles. There's 5 tiers on there. I'm not going to describe them all. We do a lot of fantasy football content, so you can see all of that on there. We also have a Gilded Chat where everybody's welcome to join, and that's free. We have a channel in our Gilded Chat that's specifically for our patrons, the Title Tribe, but we also have it open. So we do mock drafts every Monday. George Reed runs them. They're called the Mock Draft Laboratory, so he does them on Sleeper. So people just, they chime in, hey, I'd like to do it. It's going to be either redraft-based, dynasty-based. Sometimes it's an NFL mock draft. So we do all sorts of things in there. We'd love to see you in there. And we're talking free agency throughout the day in the Gilded Chat, and we're dropping news in there. And as we're dropping news, we're recapping it. And there's tons of guys in there. And we are all discussing what we think and how we think it'll affect the upcoming NFL season. If you have Apple Podcasts, go to Apple Podcasts. Throw us a 5-star Apple review. That helps us as well. And then check out toiletstotitles.com because I think we have 87 player profiles up there for the NFL draft. We have mock drafts up there. We have articles and also links to everything we do on YouTube. You can find it on there. So it's one space. You can't find us on YouTube, but you should be able to because it's Toilets to Titles. But if you can't, go to toiletstotitles.com and you'll be able to find a link that you can click and you can get right to us. But man, those player profiles, I want to get to 100 this week. We've been grinding them out. I've been doing about 10 a week and moving on to linebackers. So what I do is I usually make a list of generalized rankings based upon a few of the biggest analysts I follow. And then I'll make like a top 20 of a specific position group. And after I make that top 20, then I go through and I try not to watch the top guy first. I'll watch like the 5th and the 10th and maybe the 2nd, and I bounce around. And then I jumble up the rankings to meet my own. And then I put them on the site after everybody's written up. So not only do you see the rankings, you'll be able to click the player's name and it'll bring you to the specific player profile. And on Toilets to Titles, the Twitter channel, we also release the player profiles from there as we go ahead and release them. So enough about me, enough about the network and the team. Let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. All right, Camp? So the first things first, it wasn't a Dallas Cowboys move. This was a Dolphins move. Jalen Ramsey to Miami for a third. It happened like right away. This was like the first thing. I think it might have even happened before the legal tampering window opened up. But what were your initial thoughts when you saw Jalen Ramsey went for only a third when he went to Miami? How'd you feel about it?
Yeah, it's always one of those things that you would love to know who was actually involved. Like Was Miami the only team that offered the third, or was there a couple of teams that offered a third and they decided to go to Miami, or he went to Miami, or whatever? It seems like a quite reasonable price, really. As we sort of discussed last week, the concerns are there that there might be a bit of a drop-off in play, but at the same time, he's still not he's not too old. I mean, if you end up looking at, we'll discuss a bit later, the Cowboys going after Gilmore, and Gilmore's got, I think, 3 years on Ramsey. So yeah, bit of a pill to swallow for the Cowboys fans to see him go for a third, because I feel like it's a no-brainer, considering it's not like they're throwing extra guaranteed money at him or anything like that.
Yeah, and Jalen Ramsey goes to a secondary where he's joined by Xavier Howard, and he's joined by Javon Holland, the safety out of Oregon, who I love. And Miami, they are ready to make if you didn't think they were ready last year, they are ready to make a run. And I think they did agree to take Tua's 5th-year option. So they're going to at least secure him until his final year of his rookie deal. They brought in Mike White, so they have a backup for when Tua goes down, because we can almost pretty much assume he's going to miss a few games. How much, we're not 100% sure. But Mike White, I think, is a solid option. And then, that offense, they brought back Raheem Mostert. Supposedly there was Dalvin Cook buzz, but this isn't now about them Dolphins. This is now about them Cowboys. I was upset, but later on in the week, I was a little more, let's say, jubilant, because there was some news, and we'll talk about that news a little later on. We got the Fumble Hurts in here. He said, sign Mecole Hardman or DJ Chark, draft Dalton Kincaid, and the Cowboys will be fine. Listen, I think tight end, we're going to talk about this at the end of the show, and we appreciate you being here, so thank you so much. But we're going to talk tight end at the end of the show. I do think the Cowboys are 100% looking at a tight end. Dalton Schultz, I thought he was going to go to the Chargers. Supposedly, I don't know if the Chargers did ink Donald Parham, but I know they were close. I thought he was going to go with Kellen Moore. So it's interesting that no one's touched Dalton Schultz. So now that we haven't touched the wide receiver, I never thought we'd bring back Dalton Schultz, but maybe he went out there and his market isn't what he thought it was. Maybe we're going to get, I go last week's episode. I thought no chance we bring back Dalton Schultz, but now that it's been a week, he's finding out his market. I think I could see him coming back to the Cowboys with his tail between his legs for a decent deal. So I wouldn't be surprised, but the Cowboys are 100% in on tight ends this year. I wouldn't be surprised. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, it's like, it sounds strange, but almost the longer that free agency goes on, the more I sort of feel like he might come back, because, I felt like if he was going to go early, then immediately the money was going to tell you that he was out of the Cowboys price range. But now we're sitting at this point, and as you said, it doesn't really seem like there's a lot of teams throwing their hat in the ring at the moment. So all of a sudden, then, familiarity in some cases is kind of a comfortable spot for some players. So it might be that thing that he's starting to think, oh, hang on, if the money is kind of comparable, well, I'll go back where I know the Cowboys. So it's going to be interesting.
And it's not just familiarity for him; it's for Dak. With Zeke gone now, we're going to get into that. And the Fumble Hurts is saying in here, I'd rather have a weapon like Kincaid or Musgrave. I'm with you, man. I want a guy who can also block. I think that's one of the reasons Schultz isn't getting as much attention, because he's basically just a pass catcher. So Mayer from Notre Dame and Washington from Georgia, those are two I enjoy. And those are two that I think, if you look at Mike McCarthy's track record, I know we had Dalton Schultz here in Dallas, but if you look at him back in Green Bay, and he's running the offense now, he likes those tight ends who can block, who can get in there, and then they can release. So I'm thinking, but we're also going to discuss the players the Cowboys had formal interviews with. And I believe Kincaid is one of them. So they must be interested if they're having a formal interview with them. So we will get to that, and I'm with you. But if, let's say, Schultz is available for the right price, and now the Cowboys can go into the draft and target an offensive lineman early, target a defensive tackle early. So the Cowboys like to put themselves in a position where they don't have to draft for need. They like to be able to draft best player available. At least that's what I've seen over the past few years, because when they do draft for need, a la Taco Charlton, it doesn't work out. When they draft best player available, like Tyler Smith, last year they thought this kid was a top 20 player. and it all came out like 2 days before the draft. Like I had no idea they were even interested in this guy. Usually you can read the tea leaves. Like we knew Leighton Vander Esch was on the board. Like you can usually read the tea leaves of who they're interested in. And that came out of left field, but let's keep going. Yeah. He's in the Fumble Hurt says no formal interviews with Mayor of Washington. Yeah. And I think now we're going to have, that was at the combine, but now they could start bringing people into Dallas. And I think they can have up to 30 visits. So we'll have to see who they bring in for those 30 visits. And then there'll be Dallas Day where anybody in the Texas area can come in and that doesn't count as a visit. So it'll be interesting to see who they get there. I'm sure Quentin Johnson will be one of those guys. Roshan Johnson will be one of those guys. Bijan Robinson will be one of those guys. Probably DeMarvion Overshown, the linebacker from Texas. They'll be able to just bring those guys in. But as far as the top 30, it'll be interesting to see. But that's I know this isn't a draft show, but the best part of this process is I love listening to other Cowboys podcasts like the Draft Show from the DallasCowboys.com, About Them Cowboys. We're now About Them Cowboys, but I like About Them Cowboys with John Machota. And I love hearing, these guys kind of try to, you ever see It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia when it's not, what's his name? Charlie he's in the newsroom and he's got like all the pins all over the board with the strings and he's trying to add things up. And I like to try to add things up and figure out who the Cowboys are going to be taken, man. It's a lot of fun trying to figure that out. All right, let's move on, man. So off the bat, Michael Gallup, we're trying to free up cap space, right? We want to be able to make some moves. Michael Gallup restructures. He had a 5-year deal signed in 2022. His salary in 2023 dropped from $11 million to $1.6 million, creating $7.05 in cap room for 2023. The team essentially cannot move on from Gallup in 2024. So they'll have to wait from 2025 if they want to get out of that contract. Connor McGovern goes to the Bills. All right. So left guard opened up at the moment. But now Tyler, I'm assuming, goes to left guard because then they're working out with Tyron Smith. We're going to get to, but this happened later in the week. But I'm assuming Tyler Smith's going to play left guard with Connor McGovern gone. Donovan Wilson, this was a big piece, which was fun to see. Was Jaron Kearse, Malik Hooker, who are both signed through next year, were both constantly tweeting out, "Did we sign him yet? Did we sign him yet?" Little hints to the Cowboys that they want their brother back. They're the three-headed monster, right? I thought Donovan Wilson was gone. I didn't think we'd be able to secure him. I thought he was going to get $10 million per year. We got him back. Now, Donovan Wilson led the team in tackles last year. I believe he had 101 tackles. Dude had 5 sacks. In the playoffs, he really started coming into his own. He was an enforcer. He set the tone. Donovan Wilson is a tone setter. Off the field, he's a quiet guy. In the locker room, he's a quiet guy. He talks with his pads, and he fired me up on the couch watching them. Like he was bringing the wood. I love having a guy like that. Lock him up. Great. I thought he was gone from the defense. I thought Dan Quinn was gone from the defense. We got these two back. I'm fired up. Malik Hooker was visibly excited. He posted a GIF of the three-headed dragon. So those dudes are really into having the three of them because we have Malik Hooker plays the deep safety, right? He's the deep free middle safety, downhill player when the ball's in front of him, patrolling sideline to sideline. Then you got Jaron Kearse, who's like the tight end eliminator, long, lengthy. And then you got Donovan Wilson, who's the box safety coming off the edge. I love it. I love it for this defense. Keep as much together as possible and then go outside, possibly bring in some talent, which the Cowboys did. What do you think about Donovan Wilson coming back, my guy?
Yeah, and look, it's really quite. Yeah, I mean, it's been a very much Cowboys week, hasn't it? Really, like you look at it and you think it hasn't really been that splashy. Obviously, Gilmore's a big name, but at this point, whether or not he's a Pro Bowler next year, we don't really know. But what it's been is it's really given the team that really strong base that if we went into a season tomorrow, you'd feel pretty comfortable at any position that there was someone there that could play. And I think that's a great place to be. And as you said, there's not really a position at the moment that you sit there and think they need to get that in round one. Obviously, offensive line, you're always going to want some players. But, if we have that situation where, like a few years ago, we picked up a certain linebacker, for instance, because he dropped down the board a bit, and we picked him. If we're in that situation again where we have a guy who drops down the board, I feel like the Cowboys are in a position to say, look, we'll grab this guy, and that's a good position to be in. So,
and you're talking about Micah Parsons.
Yes.
And if you follow me on Twitter, this is a humble brag. A year prior, going into the final season of Micah Parsons' college career where he didn't play, after the previous season, I said Micah Parsons was the number one player on the board. You can go back, check my receipts on Twitter. I said Micah Parsons to Dallas is my dream. Shane Hallam, who's my guy from draftcountdown.com, said I was crazy. The Cowboys won't be drafting high enough to get a guy like Micah Parsons. Dak goes down. It works out. I called it. I said he's that dude, and he is that dude. So that should give this show your stamp of approval right now. I don't always – I swing and I miss sometimes. I was really high on Darius Geis, and that didn't work out. But I will talk about my wins. And you're right, man. Like, to be able to get a guy like that is huge. And they're bringing in – so now let's go into – they bring back Leighton Vander Esch, who's another player I thought was gone. So it seems like they're very focused on bringing that defense back intact, maybe adding a weapon to it. I think Leighton Vander Esch was expecting to get more money, getting about 5.5 per year. I think he was trying to get that bag. He's got that neck injury, that collarbone injury. I think there's some incentives in that contract, which is smart. But now the Cowboys can focus on best player available, probably, which is going to lead to our draft segment a little later on the offense. Now, the fumble hurts. Dude, you're doing – I appreciate you in the comments, man. You're really helping with the show. He says, say Schultz comes back and the Cowboys give up a fourth for Brandon Cooks. I would enjoy that. Then they draft Drew Sanders in the first, linebacker from Arkansas. I haven't watched him yet, but I've heard about him. I think he's like a rush type guy. Another guy like Micah Parsons. Maisie Smith in the second, big defensive tackle from Michigan. And J.L. Skinner, who I do know a lot about from Boise, went down and interviewed him at the Senior Bowl. You could actually see my interview on the YouTube channel. I would enjoy that. But what I actually think, I think the Cowboys are rebuilding the defense so that they could target offense in the first. I think it's going to be field stretch and tight end who can block. It's going to be an offensive lineman. It's going to be a wide receiver. And I think the wild card is running back. That's the wild card. If Bijan Robinson's there's a good chance. So I think the Cowboys are making themselves comfortable with that defense so that they can go and bring in the best player on offense. Because I don't think they're willing to spend money. I think Brandon Cooks is a possibility. I think they were interested in him last year. I think Jerry Jeudy's a possibility. I think Odell Beckham's a possibility. I think DeAndre Hopkins is a possibility. But I also think the Cowboys don't want to get cake on their face. They don't want to look silly. They traded Amari Cooper for a fifth. They're not going to go out and trade a second round for DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to wait till the NFL draft, see what everybody else is willing to do, and they're going to tell Arizona, hey, this is what we're willing to do. We're willing to give a third or whatever. And I think, Arizona's either going to accept it or they're not. And then the Cowboys they're a little stubborn with that. But all right, this is probably the biggest move we've had during the free agency period. It was a trade. I am excited about it. Stephon Gilmore, the Cowboys traded a fifth-round pick, which was a compensatory pick, which is a pick they were given for the playing time that one of the players that left their roster on free agency went to another team. That's how compensatory picks work. And they traded that compensatory pick for a player. Stephon Gilmore, I think he's 32 right now. He had a 79.1 man coverage grade in 2022. 81.1 overall grade. That was seventh among all corners for PFF. He also had an interception versus Dallas when they played December 5th. He had 5 targets. He only allowed 2 receptions. And the funny thing is, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter, Camp. Trayvon Diggs and Micah Parsons fighting over getting his jersey after the game in December. Parsons was trying to get it, and he's taking off his jersey, and Diggs is pulling it back so that he can get his to Stephon Gilmore first. So these two young dudes, they love Stephon Gilmore. Now he's on the team. He's a lockdown corner that can play opposite Trayvon Diggs, and we got Deron Bland in the slot. I love our secondary. And with that pass rush, Stephon Gilmore, he's smart. He's savvy. I think they're going to be able to – because I think Trayvon plays better against bigger, more physical wide receivers. So you can play matchups. You can do that. You can put Trayvon on Mike Evans. You can put Stephon Gilmore on Chris Godwin. Then you can let Deron Bland play in the slot. Deron Bland, dude, that kid can play. So how do you feel about the Stephon Gilmore deal?
Yeah, look, I mean, we've talked about Ramsey, and you wonder between the third and the fifth. Like, well, would you prefer Ramsey for that third? Well, you probably would, but like getting Gilmore as that kind of fullback is a pretty amazing fullback, really. And as I said, it's just they've done a great job this week of really filling out the team where, I don't know about you, but I feel like if we're going to training camp tomorrow, I would be pretty comfortable with this team not having any holes where I was really sort of stressing about the situation. And so, it's just a great situation to be in before the draft because not every team can be in this situation. So I'm sure that there's some places that you would love to get, an upgrade or, that game changer player. And I think there's still a chance to obviously do that. As you said, whether or not it's a wide receiver or, trying to get Bobby Wagner, who's still floating around, adding those people might pop the top off the roof kind of thing. But like, it's a great position that you're not, as you said, the Cowboys are kind of in a good position where if, say, for instance, that Hopkins is available for a first, they don't need to worry about that. They can sit there and say, no, we're not paying that. And we can see if the price comes to our market. Like, if it's something that, like a third or something or fourth, then yep, no worries. If we're comfortable with that, we can pay it. There's no rush to go out and actually make these decisions because if you're in a rush to make a decision to fill a hole, that's when you often make bad decisions.
Yeah. And the Fumble Hurts is in here again. He mentioned that, Stephon Gilmore was on a defense that won a Super Bowl. He also was Defensive Player of the Year. So he's got experience. And I think that's great for a locker room. A guy who's been there before, who's done it before, and who could show. That's what Bobby Wagner would have been. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, with them bringing back Leighton Vander Esch, unless Bobby Wagner wants to go on a run. If he wants to go on a run with Dan Quinn and he knows, hey, I might be retiring in a year or two, this is the time to do it. You had mentioned, Odell Beckham. There were rumors that he wanted $20 million a year, 15 to 20. He comes back and says, no, I didn't want that, but I also didn't want 4. So he's saying that he's being offered 4. So he's probably going to get somewhere between 8 and 12. So Odell Beckham's still an option. DeAndre Hopkins an option. Brandon Cooks is an option. Jerry Jeudy's probably a pipe dream because I think, Denver's shipping Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, one or the other. They're not going to send both of them. They want a first, but then now they're kind of backtracking a little bit and they're saying a second and then and a player. Personally, I think Jerry Jeudy's a dude. He hasn't been consistent in the NFL, but he's flashed. That's who I would go after. It's going to take more. And I know you're going to need to pay him when you need to pay CeeDee Lamb. We can get all into this. I would let Trayvon Diggs walk in 2 years because I think he's going to demand too much money. I love the turnovers, but I don't just the consistency. I think if I'm going to pay somebody on the defense, it's going to be Parsons. I'm going to pay Parsons. I'm drafting a corner this year. So I love Julius Brents from Kansas State. That's a guy we can get in the second or third. Now, we're getting a little too far ahead of ourselves. We can get into the draft talk, but we have opinions, we have thoughts. Fumble Hurts also mentioned that the Cowboys did a lot of – Kyle Yeomans had mentioned Dallas Cowboys did a lot of background checks on Maisie Smith at the Combine. And the Cowboys need a big physical defensive tackle because when they had one last year, when they traded to the Raiders, I can't think of the player that I'm sure Fumble Hurts knows, and he'll put it in the chat. It was a big physical nose tackle type who Vander Esch played so much better when we had that in front of him because that was eating up blocks and interior offensive linemen weren't able to get to the second level. And that freed up, that kept Vander Esch from getting contact every play, freed him up to go sideline to sideline. That's what Maisie Smith would be. Also, by the way, Kyle Yeomans and I have been in discussion. He's been on the show 2 or 3 times. He's either coming on next week. So, by the way, Campey, letting you know, he's either coming on next week or he's actually Kyle Yeomans he's at his bachelor party right now. So he's he's getting married. So we're chatting. I'm letting him be for his bachelor party. We'll be having him on. Dane Brugler, who's also bounces back and forth with the Cowboys draft show and The Athletic. He's not going to be coming on now about them Cowboys, but we'll be having him on the Clock, which is our draft show every Thursday night with me, Nino, and KT. So, you talk about the offense and going into training camp. I would be very comfortable going into training camp with the defense. With the offense, not so much, right? Zeke gone, that's really not what bothers me. Like, it bothers me more as a Cowboys fan because I love Zeke. I love what he's about. He's a competitor. He works hard. He does the dirty work. He wants to win. I want guys like that in our locker room because we haven't always had that. we've had a lot of guys who come to the Star and they want to build a brand, a la Jalen Smith. You know, like they want to build a brand. They want to sell their sunglasses. They want to swipe. Like Zeke, yeah, he had his brand, but he was about it. You could tell the dude wanted to win. He wasn't smiling after a loss. Okay. Post June 1st cut, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back. All right. I wouldn't be surprised with the way the Cowboys treated him on the way out. And if he goes out and the market isn't there, I wouldn't like Darius Slay went back to Philly. Darius Slay got the bag. I don't think Zeke's going to get the bag. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back like on a low contract deal. I wouldn't. So keep your eyes open for that. Noah Brown, another guy who did all the dirty work, man. He was the third wide receiver. When he was in, you knew he was blocking, you know, but then this year he came into a little bit more of a pass catcher because Jalen Tolbert didn't step up. Michael Gallup was hurt. That's where I'm nervous. Wide receiver 3, if we go into camp, because I don't really like Gallup as a 2. I'd rather Gallup be my 3. I like him stretching the field. I like him on the comebacks. I like him on third down plays, moving the chain. I want a guy at wide receiver 2 who's a little more dynamic than Gallup. And I'd feel so comfortable with Gallup as a 3 because really when Schultz was in there, Gallup was the 3, right? He's not a 2. So now we need a 2. We don't have a 2. Is Tolbert going to step up? I've been seeing the 42nd Witness, I think his name is, Instagram account. He does a lot of work with the Cowboys. He's a photographer. So he was at the Dak yard. That's what Dak's backyard is called with the field. And Dak's been training and Tolbert's been there. All right. And then some of the young tight ends have been there. So Dak's working with Tolbert. We got Kevontae Turpin. Are we going to work him in at wide receiver 3? Are we going to draft a rookie? So I'm not comfortable with the offense. And then also with Tyron Smith, right? So we got to get to this. The Cowboys announced they restructured his contract, converting some of his $13.6 million scheduled compensation to incentives, lowering his $17 million cap hit. The deal includes a $3 million signing bonus, a $3 million guaranteed base salary. He can earn a lot more. So he can earn, I believe, $9 million through playing time incentives and $2 million in playoff incentives. It cleared $9.6 million in cap space. Phenomenal. So I love that because I like Tyron Smith, but there was a drop-off when he played on the right side from Terrence Steele. I know he came off the injury. I believe if he's fully healthy, which is tough, we're going to really have to manage him and limit his snaps. But if we have him at left tackle, I'm okay with Tyler Smith at left guard, Zach Martin at right guard, Terrence Steele at right tackle. All right, Tyler Biadasz at center. I'm comfortable with that, but I do think we need to bring in depth because in a guy who I'd like, Cody Mock from North Dakota State, who can play guard, tackle, and center, another second-round target. Too bad we don't have 5 second-round picks. So I want Brents. I want Mock, John Michael Schmitz. He's a center. There's guys I want there. So I want a versatile offensive lineman who could step in if need be. And then I feel really good about it because that's with McGovern gone, right? Now we have to fill that up. So Tyron Smith comes back. DeMarcus Lawrence, we restructured him. It opened up $8.89 million in room. So the Cowboys were making a lot of moves. So they restructured Dak, Zach Martin, Michael Gallup, DeMarcus Lawrence. They worked on a deal with Tyron Smith. They let Zeke go. They were able to sign Cooper Rush 2 years up to $6 million, which I thought he was gone. I like that steady backup. He's not phenomenal. He's good enough. So after the first week of free agency, the top 5 teams with salary cap space right now: Bears with 41.9, which is ridiculous. Packers with 24.4. Cardinals with 23.3, the Falcons with 21.8, and the Dallas Cowboys 21.3. So they still got some space. So it's either they're going to go out and target somebody, or you're going to watch this CeeDee Lamb deal is going to come in. They're going to sign one of their guys, extend them, so that then they could eat up some salary cap this year, free up some space next year. So what do you think about Tyron Smith, that offensive line, and then we'll go ahead and we'll talk about the NFL draft and maybe some projections going forward.
Yeah, well, just back to Zeke briefly, it's sort of one of those things. In a fairy tale land, you like the concept of being able to have guys like that where you can just say, look, we're just going to keep paying you whatever, but it's outside the salary cap. But life doesn't really work that way because if you did something like that, that the NFL teams are going to immediately find loopholes in it to ruin it and sort of take away what it would be sort of what we would like. But he just feels like someone who you would love to have as a Cowboy for his whole life, even though, you could see he wasn't really the same player. And we sort of mentioned last week that at times it was just like he was running in concrete. He just could not get that burst. But he's still, short yardage and that stuff, he still provided something. So, if it wasn't for the cap number, then you think he would be back. And, it almost goes back to what we're talking about with Schultz. The longer he's in the market, the more it makes you think, well, the chances of him coming back to the Cowboys goes up. Because if he was snapped up straight away, then, okay, there's teams out there talking decent money. But if he's not snapped up straight away, then, maybe the numbers aren't there that you expect. And we've seen running back as a whole just become a wasteland for a lot of guys who have gone from being starters to, out of the league in a couple of years. So it might be that he's realizing the market's not there and once again might want to go where he's comfortable. But Tyron Smith, the thing about Tyron is, I don't think anyone out there would gamble that he's playing more than 10 games. I think 10 is the kind of baseline that we've seen for the last sort of 8 years. The key is when are you getting those games? From my point of view, and I sort of mentioned last year before, unfortunately, he was sort of injured, but I'm not too stressed if he's not playing, week 1 to week 8. What I want is when we're rolling into the playoffs, have that line to be really strong, because that's what you want. Is you want to, like, this team isn't designed around, well, we hope they go okay and we might sneak into the playoffs. We're like, okay, if we get to the playoffs, we want to try and make some noise. So I'm kind of really hoping that they can kind of nurse him through the start of the season and make sure they've got that strong line at the end of the year. And, it's always kind of a benefit too. If we do get those young linemen, it's never a bad thing to give them some experience. So if we can get them some game time early, it's only going to be better for them long term. So, I'm generally pretty happy with all the moves they've done. I think they've done a great job. As you said, they've got that space, but a lot of Cowboys fans out there would love them to go do a big splash. But I think, they've shown over the last few years they're restrained in those big splashes. And when they have this money, they tend to look at, signing their own. And, whether or not it's Lamb or whether or not it's looking at Dak, you kind of feel like that's why they're looking at that, keeping that money right now and not really keeping it for a big name player. But, could be wrong. They might get to that point where they think that, someone is going to put them over the top. And if that comes along, then so be it.
I think Gilmore qualifies as a splash, for sure. And I got to give him the credit because I don't care how old he is. It's a splash right now. Joe Clark wants to know, would you prefer Odell Beckham or DeAndre Hopkins?
Good question.
I think Hopkins fits better in this offense because Odell is more of a slot. He can't play on the outside, but at his age, I'd like to keep him off the press, keep him off the line of scrimmage, allow him. He might have lost that quick first step, so allow him to have some space right off the snap so he can get on the DB's heels. He can open up. I think you're going to want CeeDee Lamb in the slot. I think Hopkins goes on the outside. I think Michael Gallup goes on the outside. Personally, I'd prefer Hopkins.
I think if it was just down to skill level, I would prefer Hopkins. I just feel like, health-wise and what we've seen recently, even with, Hopkins' issues, I feel more comfortable where he is as a player. It's just obviously, as we mentioned last week, my concerns around him is whether or not he's going to want more money thrown in, and it's going to cost you a pick as well. So it kind of becomes that thing of, okay, factoring in all that as well, if you can end up getting Odell for, say, $6 million or $8 million, it kind of sort of like it makes it a really kind of close race in my mind.
Yeah. I think Odell Beckham ultimately, with Juju heading to New England, if I'm him, I'm going to Kansas City.
Yes.
Win another Super Bowl, man. This time, go ahead and you were there, you got hurt. Like, what's the quickest way to guarantee you get back there? You go to Kansas City. You all but do that. So the player that I was talking about earlier, Fumble Hurts, let me know. It's Jonathan Hankins. Again, I appreciate you, dude. We need to get you. Fumble Hurts. You need to, if you're on Twitter, reach out to me on Twitter at Coach Chefs. We need to get you in our Gilded chat, man. I'd love to interact with you some more. That's where the title tribe is in there. We need to get you on there. So it's at Coach SCHEPPS or just at Toilets Titles. Reach out to us there. Now, he also mentioned, let's move on, right, to some draft targets. We talked some trade targets, all right? He mentioned Steve Avila from TCU. Said the Cowboys are very high on him. He's an offensive guard. And, that we need that because Tyler Smith ultimately is going to be playing outside. And also Zach Martin's not getting any younger. He's not getting any younger. I believe he's 32, 33. And that's a guy played at TCU. We can get him. The Cowboys, who are interested, could bring him in on Dallas Day, and that wouldn't count against their top 30 visits. So that'd be a solid selection. He's a bruiser. I believe I mocked him in the Dallas Cowboys latest. We did a 2-round mock draft on toiletsandtitles.com. I believe I mocked Steve Avila to the Dallas Cowboys in the second round. So I would like that. Matt Hatton, our guy Matt at FF_doormat, he mentioned Adam Thielen. He's another guy I think would operate mostly from the slot. And I don't think he's going to want to come to Dallas. He just doesn't seem like a Cowboy, and though I like how he plays, I don't see it, man. I could maybe like with the Bills possibly moving on from McKenzie, or they did move on from McKenzie. And then I'm hearing rumors about Gabe Davis trade. Watch him go out to Buffalo and reunite with his dude Stephon Diggs. That would be very interesting. And Joe Clark, Joe knows. He always knows, man. Said I did mock Avila to the Cowboys in the second round. So that was a few weeks ago. So I would like that. Joe also mentioned he agreed Hopkins. He's only a second and a fifth, allegedly. So he would take DeAndre Hopkins over Odell Beckham. But that's the tough thing. Odell Beckham's on the free agent market. Hopkins you got to trade for him. And I don't know if the Cowboys are going to be willing to give up because they're usually, but someone did a thread of the Cowboys are very good in the first round, but they did a thread of our second round picks. Not very good. Not very strong. All right, let's talk about the draft here. Tulane had their pro day. The Cowboys, there were 3 linebacker coaches at the Tulane pro day. The Cowboys had one of them. All right. So I know a lot of people are there to see Tajay Spears, but Dorian Williams, Nick Anderson and Dorian Williams, 2 linebackers out of Tulane. If you're a Cowboys fan, I'm going to be watching my linebackers this week. Roll Wave. Title's big Roll Wave fans, man. Tajay was on the show. Nick was on the show. Like, love them boys. And go ahead and watch Nick Anderson. Go ahead and watch Dorian Williams because the Cowboys are obviously interested. They sent a linebacker coach out there. And Campey went ahead. He did some research for us. We're going to talk about some offensive skill position players who the Cowboys supposedly had formal interviews with. All right, our list is a little more than they're allowed to have, so I'm not sure if we're exactly spot on, but I do believe the Fumble Hurts will correct us. We'll call him our stat guy or our moderator in here in the chat. And Israel Bonaconda, first and foremost, running back out of Pittsburgh. If you draft this guy in the 3rd or 4th round, so they also had one with Devin A-Chain, Eric Gray. So they had other running backs. I think A-Chain, similar to Pollard, but I also think he's a guy where you would need to keep Pollard around, and I think you'd want to have a two-headed monster. Bonaconda, if you draft this guy, you can move on from Pollard in a year, and he could be your feature back. I still think you'd want to bring in a second option, but to me, Bonaconda is a 3-down back, a premier running back. It would be so much fun watching him and Pollard this year, and I think it would be bye-bye Tony year 2. I think we'd franchise him. So go ahead and watch some Israel Bonaconda. He's explosive. He's fast, straight line speed, great build. Like the way he runs behind his shoulder pads, like you look at it, he just looks like a hammer, but he's also got great vision. And A-Chain, he's no joke either out of Texas A&M. Texas A&M uses him on the outside as a wide receiver as well. And he's very fast. He's explosive, but the draft capital is going to be higher for a guy like Devin A-Chain. And then now we want to talk about some wide receivers. Jordan Addison, Jalen Hyatt, Tyler Scott, who's being comped by Dane Brugler to Tyler Lockett. He was a track star. Tyler Scott at Cincinnati, track star in high school, was a running back in high school. I think he ran for like over 3,000 yards as a running back in high school and then converted to wide receiver. Jackson Smith-Njigba, my favorite wide receiver in this class, another slot wide receiver, but I'd be willing for a young guy because you'd have to play him in the slot. So CeeDee Lamb would have to move on the outside. But honestly, I don't think Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to fall to us. I think it's more likely Bijan Robinson falls to us than Jackson Smith-Njigba. So do you have any thoughts on some of these wide receiver options that the Dallas Cowboys may be interested in?
Yes, that's interesting. So you're much more versed in the college environment than I am. The quality of college content that we get down here is not not amazing. It's getting a lot better than it used to be. But like, it's probably a non-surprising list when you look at the people they're speaking to. Like, obviously, it's not really, it's not full of quarterbacks, which is probably not surprising. But it's really kind of that list that you look at and you think there's a lot of guys in there that could probably,
a lot of them are slot receivers with so we will, like, they're obviously looking at, I mean, there's a lot of top talent slot receivers. I like Josh Downs. We weren't sure if Josh Downs was of a more explosive Cole Beasley. And Dak and Cole Beasley, they had a thing. They had a big connection before we moved on, and the Cowboys ended up with a guy like Dalton Schultz, and that he became like that check down.
Hello. I think I've lost you. I don't know if everyone else has lost you. Looks like we might have lost him.
My bad.
Oh, he's back.
Yeah, sorry about
He's
that.
Back.
Something happened with my internet. I'm plugged in hardwired, but I
It's always that thing.
Go ahead.
It's always that thing with technology. It's just like the minute something happens, you think, is it me or is it them? And I was like,
man, it was weird. I'm hardwired, but when I transitioned to it, something must be going on with the whatever. Anyway, I was talking about how the Dallas Cowboys are mostly looking at slot wide receivers, but it's really, that's the strength of this class. You got a guy like Quentin Johnson, who's an outside wide receiver, Cedric Tillman from Tennessee, A.T. Perry. These are all guys that can play on the outside, but it's a much more top loaded if we're looking at the first round at slot wide receiver. Jordan Addison, I believe, was a Blitnikoff winner, top wide receiver in the nation 2 years ago at Pitt before he went to USC. So there's a lot of talent there. Zay Flowers out of Boston College. He's a dude they didn't have a formal with. He's another slot guy, and they might be holding their cards close to their chest with that one. Like, maybe we don't want anybody to know how interested we are in him, but he is twitched up, explosive, yards after the catch, aggressive. And then again, Josh Downs, who I'd mentioned, I don't know how much you heard of that because I did freeze up during that segment. Josh Downs is elite route runner, great chain mover, great in the red zone because he just gets open quickly. And I think Dak would be really comfortable with him. On the offensive line, they looked at a guy, O'Cyrus Torrence, who's a guard, who's got hammers for fists. And there's a very good chance in the first round, it comes down to O'Cyrus Torrence, John Michael Schmitz, who I mentioned earlier, Central Michigan. That might be a little bit early, but the Cowboys have showed they're at the end of the first. I think that's more of a trade back option, but they did it with Travis Frederick. They did it with Tyler Smith. If they like an offensive lineman, even if you don't like him, they don't care. They're going to take him, and there's a good chance they're going to be right. So I will trust them. So look at, and then Broderick Jones, offensive tackle from Georgia. So there's a few first-round targets on the offensive line. And then we had mentioned Dalton Kincaid, the tight end out of Utah. You look at this guy, man. He had 2 drops total on 108 catchable passes the last 2 seasons. I've heard him referred to as the best receiver, catcher of the football in the entire class, including wide receivers. He was 16 of 27 in contested catch situations. It's more than 50%. I think that would be that's a home run. Are we willing to take a tight end in the first round, Andrew?
Well, I mean, and that's sort of like, as you were sort of asking my opinion before, like what the Cowboys have shown is, and I think it's because of the way that they've managed their roster, they haven't gone into that situation where they've ended up getting, a jag, just a guy who's just like, well, we need a wide receiver or we need this. That the position themselves where they can look at different positions. And I think, my concern with tight end is always you don't really see that many tight ends bust out first year. We obviously have there was a tight end that was drafted by the Falcons a few years ago that everyone thought was going to be the man, and then all of a sudden he struggled in year 2.
Right.
But
But Dak has a history of utilizing his tight ends, like early and often.
Yeah, and like you feel it's a great situation to be in, because you kind of feel like if they don't go tight end, well, I'm not worried that it's going to be this fatal flaw for the team. But then the flip side of that is, if they get a guy who's going to come in who's going to add that thing, and then maybe in year one he's not getting 1,000 yards or anything like that, but just someone who's in that position sort of later in the season to give us those crucial catches at crucial times,
right?
Then, as you sort of mentioned, the defense is looking like it's going to be really good. So
right,
the focus is on making sure.
They did have formal interviews with a few defensive players, and we're going to have a lot of draft content. So we're not going to touch on all of them. Skinner, Branch, Overshone, Brents. So there's defensive players they're interested in. We're just kind of touching on the offense because we feel after the moves they've made that's where the holes are. But what you're talking about with the tight end stretches this year. Like, it's not Kincaid or bust. It's not. And I think you've seen in the past with the NFL that tight ends who've taken in the third or fourth, they can succeed as well. The Cowboys have shown that with Ferguson and Schultz. So there's Dalton Kincaid. Then there's Michael Mayer at Notre Dame. So those two, Luke Musgrave. So these are probably all top 50 picks. Then you got Sam Laporta out of Iowa. Honestly, I am completely fine sitting. If this dude's there in the third, give me a tight end out of Iowa. Dude's tough as nails. Like, absolutely tough as nails. Oh, and I didn't even mention Darnell Washington. Like, Joe said he's going to cry. Darnell Washington might have bumped himself after the pro day he had. He is an absolute freak. 6'7". I think he ran like a 4'6". So we got Sam Laporta. It was a consolation prize to me. Get me a tight end from Iowa. This dude chews nails, eats nails for breakfast, spits them out, blocks, catches, tough after the catch. Like I said, Darnell Washington, then Tucker Kraft, South Dakota State. Some people like people who are really into the draft, and sometimes people like to put their stamp on players who are a little less known. So I don't know if it's so much that, but I've seen some people I trust say that they think Tucker Kraft is the best tight end in this class. Like, when all is said and done, that's 6 guys right there that I mentioned. And then I didn't even mention the dude who looks like the human form of Beast from Beauty and the Beast. I think it was Dayton, or I can't think of his name right now. I'm having a brain fart, but he was like 6'7" and ran like 4.5, 4.4 at the combine. So there's tight ends for days. It stretches. We don't have to take one in the first round. Personally, in the first round, I am going offensive line, or I am going wide receiver, or I am going corner, because there's strength. There's corner stretches as well. So I wouldn't mind corner in the first, then taking a tight end or vice versa, because corner stretches as well. And then we could move on from Trayvon Diggs if we have to, or Stephon Gilmore, due to his age. We have somebody ready to go after that. Camp, let's finish with this. What position do you want to attack in the first round of the 2023 NFL Draft?
Oh, look, I mean, as I said, I feel like if we were going to, come up with a new name for this episode, it would just be, BPA, best player available. I don't really have, position doesn't matter to me. It's sort of, I guess, like,
what's the biggest hole? What are you most concerned about? What's the biggest hole the Dallas Cowboys have right now?
Oh, look, I just want to know, and I think we're probably going to learn in the first couple of weeks. The coaches have to understand together what they are wanting this team to be. So, is it going to be a case of we're going to have a defense that is, just going to be constantly hitting you with a jab and jab and jab, and then they're going to be expecting, home runs from the offense? Or is it going to be the opposite, where the offense to a certain extent and it's going to be vanilla, and then the defense is going to, cover everything else? So,
yeah.
From my point of view, it's, so like, if Bijan Robinson's there and what the Cowboys are in a position that they think he's good, like, as I mentioned last week, getting that 5th year with a running back, I think is a great thing. But then on top of that, if you give me a game changer at wide receiver, a game changer at tight end, I'm not going to have any issues. I think, from my point of view, just get that game changer. I don't care what position they play. you kind of hope that the team is good enough to be able to get that game changer and put the ball in their hands when they need it. So
that's what we've needed in the playoffs. If Parsons changed the game against Tampa, like he was, I don't care what the stat line showed. If you watch that game, he was always around the football. Tom Brady was shaking in his boots. So we need that. I think we need that on the offensive side of the ball. We need a game changer superstar. Cam, it has been absolutely incredible doing this second episode with you. A lot of fun stuff. We'll see what happens this coming week. We'll see. I'll talk to Kyle Yeomans. I'll see if it'll be the next episode he comes on. We'll probably dabble into some more NFL draft, maybe focus on some specific position groups going forward in the next few weeks. But it's been a lot of fun. Here's to the Cowboys improving, making moves. Everybody who's been in the chat this morning, Funkle Steve, Joe Knows, Nate Wallen, the fumble hurts, Matt Hatton. Oh, now I get the fumble hurts. I get the tag now. It's referring to Jalen Hurts fumbling away at the Super Bowl. So now that makes sense for a Cowboys fan to have that at his handle. I appreciate it. That fumble saved us from having to deal with the Eagles winning another Super Bowl. So everybody, we will see you all next week, Sunday morning, same time. And again, like, subscribe, comment, all that helps us. Tuesday night, we're having Randy on from DWZ. We're going to be talking rookie dynasty rankings. Thursday night, we're going to be talking on the clock, running back sleepers in the upcoming NFL draft class. If you are into the Giants, if you want to hear about the Giants because you're worried about the Giants as a Cowboys fan, Joe Knows talks about the Giants on Wednesday nights. So we got a lot of content. We got head-to-head IDP content. Like, just subscribe, tune in, get in the Gilded Chat. If you want to get in the Gilded Chat, at Coach Sheps on the Twitter, at Titles, we'll get you in there. And, man, we got you covered this offseason. Take care. We'll see you later.